The Connector Next Door is your invitation to meet the natural connectors all around us. They represent the everyday event planners who are energizing their communities every single day. Their stories are familiar, fun, and full of charm. Your host, Lisa Garrow, is a lifelong event planner and has been a connection strategy coach for over a decade. She knows events can become energized connecting points where communities can gather and grow. Let's listen in as she strikes up a conversation with today's Connector Next Door.
Janice Cardinale has been listed as one of the top 100 most influential people in events. She's in the Smart Meetings Hall of Fame, is noted as one of BizBash's 15 over 50, is a Smart Meetings entrepreneur, a reimagined powerful businesswoman, and, by the way, the fiery founder of the Event Minds Matter community, which is where our lives intersected in the fall of 2023. The community Janice ignited in 2022 grew out of a compassion and a concern for the next generation of event, meeting, hospitality, and travel professionals. Event Minds Matter is a community of like-minded event professionals committed to creating thought leadership and a new culture in the events industry. Being a natural connector, Janice has welcomed 20 like-minded professionals to volunteer their time, as she does, to change the conversation on mental health in an industry fraught by stress, anxiety, and burnout. Janice says in the event industry, we need to open a conversation within our associations because language matters. Education is needed. Being kind is essential, and listening is paramount. In our conversation today, Janice shares how we didn't know that we could work differently. We didn't know we should have boundaries. But when we know better, we can do better. And Janice won't stop until we get there together. Well, welcome back, everyone, to the Connector Next Door and to a new friend. We had a little bit of a chat before I hit record here, Janice, but I'm so glad that you're here to talk about your work, but more so who you are. And I just feel that you are shedding a lot of light on some pretty tough things, but I think you're also bringing a lot of light to what we call the event industry. So thank you for being here today. So glad that you're with us.
My pleasure. I was very much looking forward to this particular discussion. I always like to talk about this because it's something that I'm very passionate about. I developed a community 2 years ago called Event Minds Matter for everybody who's listening. And this community has grown in leaps and bounds over the last couple of years, so much so that we're just about to hit our goal this year of 2,500 followers.
Wow.
Which is huge for a small community like ours. We only have 20 members, but they're all like-minded event professionals. So those of you who are listening out there, you should know that it's only event professionals that are working to try and support an industry that's struggling with mental health and wellness.
And so necessary. And I think when we start talking about your background and my background and what we faced, and I've been quite open about the burnout that I faced when I was in my early 20s. And they say 10,000 hours, I think, before you're a master at something. And I sometimes joke that by the time I was 20, I think I put in 10,000 event planning hours. But when you start to realize that the way that you've always done things isn't necessarily working for you anymore, and in a way that you have to shake things up and find yourself again, and then find how you re-enter the work that you love. I would love to hear from you what the word connection means to you, or even just what connection means to you in your world today.
It's really interesting that you asked that question because I believe strongly in human connection, but I believe even more so in human sustainability. I believe that the way we have worked over the past many years as elders within this industry has been habitual. We didn't know that we could work differently. We didn't know we should have boundaries, and we were all about expectation. This is what led me after COVID to start this community, besides the fact that I too have been someone who has, been afflicted with depression, not in the last 10 years, thankfully, but I can advocate for it today. I understand what people go through when they're in a position like that. And not everybody working in the event industry has a diagnosed mental health problem. But our community was set up to try and bring content to the workplace. We are not clinicians, we are not therapists, we don't try to be, but we do a lot of listening to a lot of people. Our community is North American wide and even more global because we have a member from the Netherlands. But the beauty of that is that a lot of people within our community bring a lot of experience, knowledge, talent to what they do and what now they're doing with the community. It's a volunteer organization, but we have presented ourselves in a very different way, a more creative way, a way that will appeal to a younger generation, which is really the reason that we started this in the first place. We're not out to change you or me. We're out to help and support the younger generation so that they don't make the same mistakes that we did. Because a lot of those mistakes can cost lifetime problems.
Especially if you're new in planning events and there's a lot of pressure to get things right and to understand what needs to be done. And I love that you used the word sustainability. And if I'm guessing right, that you're saying sustainable in the sense that we can continue in that work. Is that what you mean by sustainability?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what does that look like in your community with Event Minds Matter? How do you talk about sustainability? And why do you believe that it's actually possible for those of us, either if we're new to planning events or if we have been around the block a few times, like you and I?
I'm going to start by saying, unfortunately, it usually ends up being somebody's bad experience that turns them around. It's unfortunate that we get into a situation where our health is being questioned, whether it be mental or physical, that causes us to stop and look and reflect on ourselves and see why we're in this situation. Because ultimately, your mental health is a choice, and only you can make that choice. I can talk to you till I'm blue in the face, and it may not make any difference at all. It's up to you what it is that you want to do with the rest of your life. And it can take years before people recognize that they have a problem. A lot of people in our industry do not, nor was it even available back then, have what I call, well, it used to be called psychology. Now I call it emotional intelligence. And that's part of what goes along with peer support from a mental health point of view, and also part of what happens when you're trying to create a caring culture. If nobody has had any kind of training within, mental health, that's a problem, because you can't solve anything or change anything without the understanding of what it takes to recognize that somebody has a problem.
And we have to look inward as well. Like, I think as we start learning more about it, we start recognizing, oh, that's something that I have been wondering about, or that's something that I think I've been doing consistently. I talk so much about people over projects now. That's a big message of mine because I was so busy doing. And when you talk about education and we get education for all sorts of things. And so what would education for planners look like? What do you think that message would be for those that are looking to do this differently?
We are very fortunate to have a member of our community who was in the meeting industry for 20 years. And she stopped being in the meeting industry when she found out she had bipolar. And she chose not to go back to the industry, which is very much like what's happened with COVID. There's a lot of planners that didn't come back because they wanted a different lifestyle. And they wanted time with their families, and they didn't want to lose their husbands. So, and vice versa, by the way, it works both ways.
Yeah.
So I think that, what she ended up doing was working with a company out of Vancouver called Mental Health Innovations. And they have brought a trademark program from Australia to Canada called We Care. And actually, it's an online program for all of $95, which is not a lot of money. It's online, but it teaches you how to recognize a problem in the workplace, the language that should be used around people that are struggling, and it teaches you a little bit about emotional intelligence. And that type of peer support that you gain from it, actually, they have a certification from Dalhousie University, by the way, just something else that everybody should know. But the We Care program is really important. And it's not like you have to go to school forever and a day to get some mental health training. But what we as a community are doing right now is we want it to be mandatory in the CMP program, the CMM program. So I often tell people that I need strong boots to climb the mountain because each time I reach a peak, there's another peak to go. So, I'm up against a lot of opinions, a lot of judgment, a lot of fear, misunderstanding. I could give you all kinds of things. But, it's fine for the whole industry to talk about, let's create a culture of caring. Let's be more kind. Let's be more empathetic. It's easier said than done, and really most pay lip service to it. But if you're really serious about this, then you got to do things like what we're doing, which is creating a white paper for the Event Industry Council, who only changes or even reviews the exam for CMP or CMM once every 5 years. I was asked to take a survey recently, and I took the survey, which took me a half an hour, and nowhere in the survey were there any questions whatsoever about mental health or wellness. It barely even had questions about sustainability. And I thought to myself after I finished, why did I do this? Because it didn't make sense to me to answer the survey and yet nothing about mental health and wellness. So it's now become, because I'm in the midst of it, me going to my network, to the leaders of SITE, the leaders of MPI, the leaders of PCMA, and presenting the paper, which is specifically and customized for the event professional. We talk about competencies in this industry when you're taking, courses that lead to the exam. But competencies are more than just understanding the AV, understanding catering, understanding the design aspect of it, your audience, the measurement, etc. Like there's nothing there for human sustainability. So here we have people graduating, very bright, creative people, but in the long run, it doesn't sustain them because they haven't learned how to deal with things humanly in their workspace.
My experience is that there really hasn't been a place to even have a conversation as you're working. Many of us have gone to school and we've had that experience of getting back into the real world, or now having to get a job, or we're working with a team that may not even understand the events that we're trying to plan. I love the example that you've given here of you don't need to have a whole lot of training to have a step up. And I do believe that this is a step by step as we learn more, as we start to see the dynamic between our teams shift and change. And as we get leaders in the industry that are willing to come forward and say, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I'm willing to take that step and risk how we've done things in the past.
Their reputation is what
their
you're
reputation. Yeah. When you're talking about the pushback, I'm very curious about, and feel free to share as much or as little as you want to about that. But when you're hearing what some of that resistance is, and maybe if we took the positive take on that, how could we lean into it as leaders? How could we, there's many people out there that have been planning and promoting events. I think I've been at it, 40 something years, all my life. But what would be that encouragement for us as leaders to say, this could be different? It just becomes something that is part of our culture.
I think as a overall industry, we need to get a lot louder. I think that we need to, we need to go to our networks and we need to encourage them to say something, to understand. For example, I put out a message last week on LinkedIn because LinkedIn is our home. We don't have
Mm-hmm.
a website or anything like that. We live on LinkedIn. But I put out, something that really addressed whether or not you think mental health should be mandatory in our industry. And there wasn't one person who said no. They all said yes. And in fact, I had some answers from people who are in their CMP currently, not even taken the exam yet. And they said 100%. I can bring a horse to water. I can't force it to drink.
Yeah.
I think that our leaders are older, and for the most part within the associations and, the different layers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it's one of those, I have to put it this way, and maybe that's part of me being a little old fashioned. But if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Mm.
So, people want to talk always positively. Everything is going great. We just had a great
Mm-hmm.
event. We went to this trade show, yada, 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 yada. Okay. And that's all fine and good.
Yeah.
But we bring purpose and value. Community is not, it's something we volunteer. We're not making money at doing anything. I'm not selling the We Care program to anybody because I don't make a dime for selling We Care. I'm just doing it because I care enough about the next generation. Quite frankly, I want to make it part of my legacy.
Mm.
Nothing would make me happier than before I go off this earth to see that, the next generation doesn't have to struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I know from my 20 years in the business, and I was on the entertainment side corporately, but I was the person sitting behind the desk, getting the call on a Friday afternoon for an RFP ready for a Monday morning and leaving my family behind. So when we
Mm-hmm.
talk about distress and anxiety, it comes from just little things like that, which are not so little. I looked up on the internet. We are now the sixth most stressful job. We've been at the sixth for a very long
Yeah.
time. Somebody along the way said third most stressful, and I might have seen that 6 months ago too. But the one thing I can tell you is that every single one of the, job categories all have mandatory mental health training. The first five.
Yes. Very interesting.
I presented that too to EIC because I
Yeah.
wanted to see what they had to say about that. Like, we call ourselves stressful, but what are we doing to deal with it?
Yeah.
Nobody's done anything, right?
If I could also add, I think it's been a badge of honor, right? Like, and it's not just in the event planning industry. Like I'm in the entrepreneurial world. You had a business, like the whole idea of the hustle and the grind. And I have been on teams where one of our gals was really having a struggle, a really hard time, needed some time, even just within a venue, just time to breathe. And one of the managers came by me and said she just can't handle the business. And when you start to see that there's a dismissiveness, and I really appreciate your fire behind this, because it does have to be almost like louder from the back, because we have to understand that this is people that we're dealing with. There's people that we want to relate to. We lose the humanity in the process of it. And when I talk about events, I call them connection points, because I feel so strongly that we need multiple connection points over time. I think with our teams too, if we're hands off until that next pressure cooker comes, what are we teaching people?
I think there's a real lack of acceptance and awareness in our
Yeah.
industry. I think that, for me, it's so easy. I used to go to my office and I would, my office was at the front. So I would leave my things there and I would make my way through the office to all the different offices and say, hi, good morning. How was your weekend? Or hi, good morning. How was your day yesterday? Or how did it go with the client? Yeah. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I made the effort. The
Yes.
problem is people can, habitual laziness. They just
Mm-hmm.
don't. They don't say, are you okay? You know,
Mm-hmm.
I know when somebody's not right. I sense
Yes.
it. It's part of my DNA. But a lot of people don't. And a lot of people just don't care.
Mm-hmm.
They say it's not my responsibility, but
Yeah.
it is their responsibility. A leader's responsibility, the owner of a business, small, medium, or large, it is their responsibility. I don't know how you can, like, I can actually measure and look at a company, okay, whether it be small or big, and say, okay, what makes that company so successful? They appreciate human capital. And
Mm.
that's what we're dealing with. Every company has human capital. But if you're going to treat it like as if it's just a financial gain, then forget it. Like you will never, ever, ever be authentic, And I think going into 2024, one of the biggest things, I've been saying it for weeks already. I said the trends are safety, trust, and humanity.
Hmm.
People don't trust their leaders anymore, whether it
Mm-hmm.
be government,
Can be anywhere.
okay, or
You're right.
anywhere, okay?
Yeah.
And safety has become a big issue. How can we keep putting all of the trendiest new things like AI in front of everybody as a priority when we haven't really dug in and gotten to the root of our problem?
Mm-hmm.
Making people recognize this is climbing the mountain that we talked about earlier. It's a huge mountain to climb. But I mean, I would love people who are listening to this to follow Event Minds Matter, comment, share, repost. Our content is directed at our industry. It's
Mm-hmm.
not, it can apply to a lot of industries, but we focus on hospitality, meeting and event planning, corporate travel.
Yeah.
So that's a huge body of people who all went through a very difficult time during COVID,
Mm-hmm.
and we're the last to come back. And now people are, very frustrated with the lack of staff. Well, why is it that there's a lack of staff?
Mm.
You just even think for 1 second how you can get people back. It's all called how you treat them. Where's the appreciation for what the humans in your company are doing for you? Where's the gratefulness? Where's
Mm.
the flexibility? Did the elders think about a 4-day work week, or they just push back, push back, push back because they
Mm-hmm.
never did it themselves? When my daughter came into my company, she already, within not too long, got me to go to a 4-day work week. And you want to know the truth? It didn't affect the company whatsoever. And then it became a 3-day work week because most people were coming from downtown and my office was up north. So at the end of the day, I could ask these staff to put in 2 hours on the highway, or they
Yes.
could stay home and do their work. And guess what? It's being a micromanager isn't going to make your company successful. Like if they're getting their work done, do I really care where it's getting done?
Mm.
And I'm of a generation, I'm 10 years ahead of you, that was very traditional in their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I
Yeah.
still think somewhat traditionally, but I've got a young mind around a lot of the problems that other people say that they're facing. But
Yeah.
there's so much of the problems that are common sense,
Mm-hmm.
but people don't use their common sense to deal with it.
Like you said earlier, I think we have a responsibility to speak out. And it isn't that you or I have the final say or the way. It's a conversation. And I
Yes,
believe
that's
that
no
we need
question.
to, yeah, we need to put ourselves in a position where we may not have all the answers, but we're willing to go there and have the conversation.
What comes to mind when you say that is we have to be intentional.
Mm.
Because when you are intentional, you empower others. You think things out differently sometimes, and the thought leadership really is where we lack. We
Mm.
need more thought leadership.
Hmm.
And you can be the best entrepreneur in your own mind. That doesn't make you a good entrepreneur.
Hmm.
If you ask the people who work for that entrepreneur what they see, it probably 9 times out of 10 will be very different than what you think you are
I'm still learning. I'm still trying things out.
every
I'm still
day.
pushing the envelope. I'm still having conversations that surprise me. And that I think is the beauty and the sustainability. And I say often to the people that I work with, it's like we need you in the game. We need your passion. We need what you're doing in the community. We need your business. We need the thought leadership. We need people to be out there and doing the things that they love and that they're geared for and that light them up. And at the end of the day, we're all better for it. And there's a long life to live. So, how do we do that in the best way possible? I so appreciate where you're taking this. I think having someone like you at the helm of a conversation like this is such a gift. Things are really busy right now, but we also are reinventing.
You know, I'm going to make a couple comments to you, which hopefully will resonate with the audience that's listening to this. And that is, I put significance over success.
Beautiful. Love that.
When I ran my businesses, I never ran my businesses to be a millionaire. Like I never got into business for the money. I got into business because I was passionate about it, and that passion led to success. Anybody who's out there trying to be part of the hustle culture, which is so passe, then, God bless you. But you will be eaten alive with that attitude. I also really think that people who are getting into this business really need to do a lot of research and talking to people, get involved in an association. There's professional development, there's networking opportunities, there are mentoring opportunities. You have to really get out there and see who's who and meet people and not have that fear. You may not be somebody who likes to talk a lot, but certainly you may have other qualities that will be brought out if you're in the right space.
That's the key, right? In the right space, take the time and the breath to say, how is that resonating with me and my own health and what's important to me? And then re-engage. And I think that's the process that I've had to learn, having burnt out early in my career. And it has allowed me to say no to some things and understanding that you have a choice. And that's where, for many of us, we do have that choice. And I understand a lot of people have to put food on the table and make sure that they have a job. But if there is something that feels off, it might be the time to go to LinkedIn, find Event Minds Matter, and follow the conversations and share your voice or some of your questions about what even is possible. When we start to verbalize some of those things that feel off, but understanding that there's all sorts of ways that we can take care of ourselves along the way. Thank you so much for this. I know we're going to have more. Hopefully we will have more conversations in the future, but if
There's
someone
so
wants to get a hold of you, there is.
They can definitely go to LinkedIn. Our page is Event Space Mind Space Matter, and you'll find us there. And quite frankly, we push content out 3 days a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Sometimes we do it on a Monday, depending on the week. We are working on some really great things. And I'll just stop you by saying, Hello, My Name is Human was a campaign that I started in the summertime. And that was started because I was making a point about the fact that when you go to a trade show, conference, meeting, event, whatever, you could meet 10 people and not remember 9 of their names. What you will remember is how that person made you feel. So that's the point about Hello, My Name is Human. I tested it out at a couple of shows, one here in Toronto called the CMEE, which is the Canadian Meeting and Event Expo. And I also tested it out in Las Vegas recently in October when I went to IMEX. So I got a lot of people holding the sign, Hello, My Name is Human, which was absolutely fabulous. And you know what? I believe that you have to bring a little humor and vulnerability to your workplace and to you and to your job.
I have always believed that events can be that catalyst for our communities, and that ripple effect can happen within our families and within our teams and with the businesses that we work with. And we can show that we're different. And honestly, the grassroots nature of Event Minds Matter, I think, is exactly what the industry needs. And so I'm excited to be part of it. Thank you so much for your time. I so appreciate it. I will put all the links in the description below. So if you are listening to this and you're saying, either you're a leader, maybe, and I love how you're saying these are the elders. If you're somebody that has been doing this a long time, there's a beautiful book that I have listened to a couple of times, read it once and listened to it. What got you here won't get you there. And it's a fantastic book about CEOs that can take that next step and say, you know what, things are really good and really successful, but if we took this to the next level, we would actually be running a next level business. So I want to encourage those seasoned planners out there that are listening to this to lean in, have that conversation with Janice if you can. And if you're just getting into this or you're feeling that you're just drowning and you're having a really hard time, I would say, Janice, that they can still be part of that community and listen. Maybe just take the time to listen to those conversations that are happening what a gift you are to the industry. And I can't wait to do more and have these conversations in the future. And then next summer, it'll be interesting to see where we are all at in a year from now.
From your mouth to God's ears, Lisa.
Thanks, Janice.
To be continued.
To be continued. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Connector Next Door podcast is produced by Candy Event Consulting, where everyday event planners and their teams gain clarity, get connected, and grow in confidence. Subscribe at www.candyconsulting.ca to hear visits with everyday event planners who are putting connections first.